Welcome back, YouTube world and Facebook world. We've been trying to give you guys updates along the way from, you could call it an insider's view, because they're definitely inside it for sure. Right now I've got with me Rav Yitzchak. Again, a lot of you know him by Ira from the past, and also Leah, Michaelson, his beautiful wife. And we were talking earlier, and the sirens were going off. And I'm not going to tell you why. That's why I have them on the show. I want them to tell you, to give you a real, like, up-to-date, minute by minute, what's happening now and what has happened. What, hate talking about fears, but everybody's got them, and there's real fear out there for a real reason. And so, Rav Yitzchak and Leah, welcome back to the show. Unfortunate circumstances, of course, but glad to have you both here. I'm glad you're both safe.
So we'll apologize for the way we look and for the view that you guys have, but we're actually in our safe room right now.
And this is life as we know it right now, because I was like, oh, I'm not made up. I'm like, well, you know what? This is real. This is as real as it gets.
Right.
So we literally, I was on the phone with my a close friend of mine in the U.S. that is my ex-business partner. We haven't talked in quite some time, and he had spoken to my sister and was concerned about us. So I was outside and on our merpeset, which is the porch. But we've been hearing jets for the past few days, obviously, as I shared with the audience the other day.
Throughout the day and night.
And but suddenly a really low-flying jet came over, probably about 25 minutes ago. And then right after that, Leah took our dog out for a walk. And
I've been taking him for short walks now, just so we're close to home, because our home front command had told us to prepare for a possible 3 days in our safe space to get all our supplies, everything that we could possibly need. And to interrupt you, while I was out with him.
While she was out, I was out there. And then after that, I heard another sound. I heard a helicopter. So I went out, and there was a low-flying attack helicopter that flew by.
Right, and I saw those. I was just a short distance away and on one of the side streets, and I saw 2 attack helicopters, one flying right over its spot and another one just a little bit further away from it. While the one was just kind of circling around spot, the other one went more towards the Galilee, but then went back with the other one. And I'm like, all right, Mush, we're going home, and as soon as I walked in the door and I actually just unhooked him, the sirens started going off. I'm like, okay, we have our first sirens.
Yeah, I was still on the phone with my friend, and I said, I'm sorry, I got to jump off. We just had sirens. So literally I closed up the back part of the house that leads out to the merpeset.
And I closed the doors.
Leah closed all the other doors, and we got into our safe space, and this is where we are right now. And so at about I would say about 6:28, 6:29 is when the first siren went off, and it's what now? It's
6:50.
6:50.
And what we've been told is once the sirens stop, then we have to wait at least 10 minutes before we come out of our safe space, just in case, there's any falling debris, shrapnel. I mean, we haven't heard any explosions or anything, but.
So you mentioned it's hard to, we wouldn't hear so much from back where we are, but the Red Alert app that we use now, not only do we have the Red Alert app on our phones, and we have 2, we have what's called the Home Front Command, which is part of the Israeli, IDF. But we also have sirens outside. In every city, there are, air raid sirens.
Right.
So our phone was going off. The city air raid sirens were going off. And the Red Alert app shows you the areas that are under attack. And then, which I didn't know, it actually, a voice came on and told us in English that it kept saying hostile aircraft intrusion. So that would be either a drone or a missile coming in from more than likely. One of the great fears has been, and I'm sure people in the U.S., regardless of what your politics are, I'm sure people heard about what President Biden spoke about in support of Israel and sending the carrier strike group here. Evidently, this was supposed to be a warning to Iran, although he didn't call out Iran by name, which I would have preferred. But Iran, Hezbollah, which operates out of southern Lebanon, as I said the other day, has far more sophisticated weapons than Hamas does in the south. Evidently, they didn't get the warning, because if we're getting air raid sirens in Sfat, which is about 23 miles from the Lebanese border, it could only be Hezbollah. If we're getting, because from what I understand, I would say that the difference between the rockets that Hamas fires and the rockets that Hezbollah fires in that idea of sophistication is Hamas does not have as long-range rockets as Hezbollah does. So the fact that they would be able to have rockets that come this far inland, not inland, but 23 kilometers from the border, as opposed to the border towns that were under fire earlier today, that tells me that Hezbollah has definitely decided to enter.
So earlier, Leah, you had mentioned that you were trying to gather supplies and stuff. I know there's apparently a 3-day lockdown that's been issued everywhere in Israel. And so for people I've heard that a lot of the stores, the shelves are empty because people's panic and just overbuying and things like this. I mean, what is the reality of this for families that are there now who may be struggling with these sorts of things, as well as, because I know a lot of people are donating. There's a donate information on your banner right now. But how is all that playing out? Do you know anything about it?
It's interesting. I went out yesterday with my big list my wonderful husband made for me, with like a really big cart that I have to fill. And then I called him because with the water and everything, there's shortage on water. What I'll tell you is that, I was able to get everything that we needed. I went to 2 different stores, but the shelves were pretty cleared off with different items, with milk and, different specialty milks and, the different things that you would have that, because you're not going to be cooking or doing anything if you lose electricity. What I was telling my husband when we were coming back, I said, it's interesting. I've been through tornadoes when I lived up in the Midwest in the US. And then, we've also lived through a lot of hurricanes. And so preparing for a hurricane, but it's like, how do you prepare in the midst of war? So for us, it's like, we just got all the supplies that we needed, like we did when we were in a hurricane, even though this isn't a hurricane, but the same thing. It's like you prepare to hunker down for however long you need. I talked with a friend of mine that's lived here since she's 2 years old, and it's like she's been here for over 60 years. Her 3rd son just got called up today. So she's got 3 sons, and most of our friends' sons have been called up. So, we know so many that are scattered throughout. But we do the best that we can. But there are shortages. There are shortages now with fruits and vegetables, because all Israelis come together to take care of our chayalim, our soldiers. So, because I think you mentioned on the show yesterday that when they were called up, it's not like they had a lot of time to gather things. So there's supply lists that they need. There's equipment that they need to have and to be able to go in. Our mayor, Baruch Hashem, we actually have a reserve battalion here in Sfat. He called up a battalion, so we have that. We have a great emergency response system here. But for people, this is our first time experiencing this. We've experienced sirens, and when we were here in 2011, and it was a test, and we didn't know it was a test, and my heart jumped. And we always knew that moving to Israel, that this was always a possibility. And so But again, when I was talking with my friend, she said when they attack us, what they do is they try and attack our water supply, electric, everything, and try and shut us down.
Wow. So what was I going to ask you, Rabbi Yitzchak? You mentioned earlier the speculation from where the majority of it's coming from, and their failure to mention Iran and all this other stuff. I find it overall. This is such a sad and angry moment for the world. It should be for the whole world. What's happening to Israel right now? So somebody had sent me a link earlier today where at least one family is defying the fear and celebrating that. I think there was a wedding that somebody said, we're having this wedding no matter what,
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing about Israel is, and I don't know how much people are hearing it there, but even our news, you see families that I'm talking about families that are literally are relatives of people who are captive in Gaza right now, and people who have lost loved ones that have been interviewed that talk about the resiliency of the Jewish people and the resiliency of Israelis in general, and the fact that at the end of the day, the Home Front Command tells us to prepare for 3 days, so we do, but everybody takes care of each other. I was listening to a little bit about our friend Gabrielle Sanders, who you had on also as well, giving an update. And Gabrielle talked about a little bit about the halakha coming out of Chol HaMoed and how people don't have, they might have not had clean clothes and needed these things. It's amazing to see people coming together and supplying things for people in the north. And then people contacting me. I've been contacted by so many people that said, how can we help? What can we do? Where can we donate? I'm talking about people in the U.S. They said, we trust you, to tell us where would be a good place. So, I'm glad that I directed some people to, a link here for soldiers in the north, because obviously now, there's probably going to be even a bigger call up here to the north now that, now that we have sirens, in our area. So, I mean, there was already troops, heading up to the north anyway. But now, I think I mentioned the other night when we spoke about the idea of the potential for a multi-front war. And we have already seen shelling from Syria earlier today. And I said that we have the possibility of Yemen, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Hamas, and so forth. So you have at least the 3 fronts now that have been opened. Whether or not they'll be continuous, we don't know. But so far you have shelling that has come from Syria. You obviously have rockets or drones coming from Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon, southern Lebanon, and Hamas.
So what help is Israel getting right now?
So my understanding is, as I said, you have the carrier strike group that came, that's now off the shore of in the Mediterranean, off the shores of Israel. It's my understanding now that the U.S. is now sending a second group, the USS Eisenhower. I understand is on its way, but typically that from where they're stationed now, it might be like a week or two before they get here. But It's my understanding that they're sending another strike group here.
How do you perceive this is? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
How do you perceive this is going? Is there any favor on Israel's side right now, or is it still overwhelmed by the enemy right now?
Well, I think the issue is that right now, without getting into details and logistics and things like that, because I think it's important that we don't share certain things as it relates to positions and plans that the IDF might or might not have. The truth is, from what I'm hearing, there's only one option we have. And that option would be to make sure that Hamas never has the opportunity to do something like this ever again.
Right.
How that's going to play out is going to be up to our generals and our government to figure out what that means and how it means. But I told you my great fear is, I shared this the other night when we did the show, and my fear has not changed. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting that I said it to you, and then I'm almost hearing people say what I said to you and to the audience almost word for word. That the concern is that, yes, everybody's lighting up their buildings blue and white right now, and everybody's saying, I stand with Israel. But what's going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks when they turn it on us and they start saying, look at the atrocities that the Israelis are perpetrating on the people in Gaza, and look at these poor people in Gaza, and then suddenly everybody's going to say to Israel, oh, enough, you got to stop, look at what you're doing. I think it's important to note this. I don't know if anybody has said this to you and the other people that you've spoken to or have come on with you, but everybody's talking about this siege, this siege on Gaza. Keep in mind that we don't know exactly the number of hostages that were taken. Okay. They're now saying that it could be, some people are saying 150. Now they're saying it could be upwards of 200. And it could be dozens of Americans as well, American citizens that were taken captive in this. They're being held. Keep in mind that one of the reasons why there would be a closure, even of the border between Gaza and Egypt, would be specifically so that there would not be the potential for Hamas to move the hostages outside of Gaza.
Got it.
To move them into another Arabic country. So people need to understand that as well. I'm not sharing anything that wouldn't. Right. It may be something people haven't thought about, but that would be something for people to understand that that's one of the main reasons why Israel would put a complete closure on Gaza in order to make sure that they wouldn't be moved out to another unfriendly country that would work with Hamas to hide these hostages, which would totally prevent any. Now, I do understand I do know that there are some teams on the ground. I don't know what else is happening as far as other teams coming in, but I do know that there's a private firm that's coming in that specializes. These are veterans, that special force guys that have worked in other countries like Ukraine and other countries to get people out. I actually know. I have a friend of a friend whose family was actually gotten out of Ukraine by this group. And I know that they have teams on the ground that specifically work on hostage extraction. So in that way, there are things that are happening, God willing.
And that's what we want. We want to bring our people home.
Right.
And so people understand our intention is not to go into Gaza and kill civilians. But unfortunately, these soulless animals, these monsters that have committed these crimes on humanity, the atrocities, use civilians, schools, hospitals as shields. They're using civilians as human shields. And so in the past, when we've had operations, not when we've been at war like we are now, but in the past, with operations, our Air Force goes in to bomb areas where Hamas is, and they've seen children and stuff, and they'll yell abort because we don't want to do that. But now the way it's looked, and we listened to one of the commanders in the IDF, and he said, if they're hiding in a school, it's not a school, it's a military base. If they're hiding in a hospital, it's not a hospital, it's a military base. And unfortunately, this is the reality, because this is what is now happening and
Yeah.
needs to be taken care of. And so unfortunately, in war, this is what's happening.
It is. It is. Following up with questions in YouTube chat, and we were already on the topic to begin with. All of our friends and family that are there. Do you have any update? I've talked to Rabbi. I've talked to a few people. Rabbi Singer safe, and Gabriel Sanders safe with Shannon Newsom. I don't know a lot more. I do believe, like Rob Jor is safe. A message out this morning as well.
Malka Root, Rita Jano, she's safe. I've been keeping in touch with her almost every day now. She's fine.
The main thing is like, like I shared the other day, if people can there are sites you can go to on Google. I'll spell it out for you in English so people can look. It's called the Mishabarach. The first word me is M-I. Shebarach would be S-H-E-B-A-R-C-H. Me Shebarach. Chayalei, C-H-A-Y-A-L-E-I, Yisrael. So if they look up Mishabarach Chayalei Yisrael, they'll come up with a special prayer for the soldiers of Israel.
Okay.
This is something that we do all the time. I really would appreciate if people would do that, because now our greatest concern is that, as I said the other day, when you look at the names that have been released of Baruch Dayan Amet, the soldiers that we've already lost, the average age that you're going to see here is in their early 20s. And most of the young people that you're going to see, that should we decide to take greater measures than we've already taken, then the people that typically are going in on the front lines are going to be not the older reservists, but the younger guys in their early 20s. And we saw amazing pictures earlier of people at Ben Gurion Airport singing and dancing to welcome all of the soldiers that were outside of Israel at the time. Tzav 8, which is a call up, and we even had one of our friends who was on with his nephew. He interviewed his nephew, and his nephew was in Italy on vacation.
He just
gotten there Friday to go hiking, and found out about what it was, and went on his phone and saw the Tzav 8, and what happened was there were no flights, obviously, because all the airlines are canceling flights. Anyway, they found out that there were hundreds of these young men that were trying to get back, and the military, the IDF, sent planes over. He was able to get to Greece, and they sent 2 planes over and picked up 300 young men that came back. And this is the thing about Israel, when I talk about the resilience and talking about having the wedding, we don't stop. Life doesn't stop. Yes, we may have to run into a safe room because a siren goes off, but we don't stop living life here in Israel. And you see these young people that don't fear and are not afraid. They're not concerned about in other places where people want to get rid of, being enlisted into the service. Here, people can't wait to get into the army. And they can't wait to get on the front lines to protect their people. This is the way Israeli soldiers are.
Are there certain areas of Israel, certain towns that are more safe than others, or is it just evenly spread?
So
the reason why, because I'm thinking, if I was in Israel and I knew that it was going to be safer, in Tzfat where you're at, then I'd be grabbing my stuff headed over in your neighborhood, and I know that could cause a population problem.
Let me give you an example. We lived in Florida before we made Aliyah. So obviously we lived through hurricanes. I lived through one of the worst hurricanes in Florida, Hurricane Andrew, which was back in the early 90s. I remember that there were people that came from that were living in, say, the Miami area, that decided to come down to where I lived, down near Homestead, in order to get away because they thought that the hurricane was going to hit straight on in Miami. Meanwhile, it hit straight on where I lived. So these people tried to get to a safe place, thinking they were going to a safe place, and they went to a more unsafe place. So realize that the country of Israel, at its widest part, is maybe 90 miles wide. As I said the other day, it's much longer than it is wide, but it's only 90 miles wide. When you think about Tzfat being 23 miles from the Lebanese border, where are you going to go, really? If you go to the Shomron, in Judea and Samaria, which the rest of the world calls the West Bank, there are terrorist attacks there all the time. And if there's not rockets, then there are terror attacks, and we have to be on guard for that, because they've already come out and warned us. Our Minister of Security for the country came out and put the police on high alert, because he said now you can expect that in mixed cities of Arabs and Jews, where there are more mixed cities, not so much like Tzfat, where there could potentially be riots between the Jews and the Arabs. So we have that. So I don't know that you can say that there's really going to be any place in Israel with what's going on right now that's going to be safe.
Right. And I was asked, I've been asked by family. I'm in touch with my family every day, and it's always, we're in touch with his sister every day, sometimes like every 2 hours, just giving updates. And I'm always giving family updates, and so, I've been asked, well, why don't you leave? Or, by anybody, not just family, but others, why aren't you leaving? Or, is there somewhere else you can go? And I'm like, where am I going to go? I could go to Jerusalem, and I could be in a bomb shelter in Jerusalem, because they're getting rained on with rockets in Tel Aviv. So for me, there's no other place I would rather be than Israel. I have no desire to leave, even in the midst of war, because this is my home.
Right. Do you feel that?
So,
sorry.
We do the best that we can.
That's
I'm
good.
sorry.
No, that's okay. So the people that are right now, you guys are hunkered down and in the bomb shelters. I'm guessing there's enough bomb shelters for everyone to go around. And that being the case, how safe is that? Is that really like 100% secure, or is it just? Is it?
No, it's not. And I can tell you that, for instance, you have certain areas, like even down in the south, where specifically they would have more. So in Hebrew, we call it a mamad. A mamad is in more modern homes. Every home today that's rebuilt or is built new has a mamad in it. Has a safe room where you're going to have
that's good.
steel doors that close the windows and so forth. Now we don't. We're in a safe.
Right. So there's others out there that are just more risky than others. Kind of just like to know for the peace of mind, knowing how safe our friends.
Leah's going to leave for a second.
Okay, sure. Sure.
That's my neighbor.
Okay, sure.
Calling.
No problem.
I
guess we just want to know how safe are y'all? Is what in the midst of all the bombing and the shooting
here's the thing. Where some people have safe rooms here in the north. Here in the north, the issue is that one of the things from a government standpoint is the north does not have as much. There are places around the city that you can go, but keep in mind that when that siren goes off here in Tzfat, if we get a red alert on the phone, I have 30 seconds.
Yeah, gotcha.
I have 30 seconds from the time the siren goes off to get to my safe space.
Gotcha.
So there's no way in that 30 seconds that I could get to one of the shelters that's in the city.
Right, gotcha.
I would have to.
Okay. I don't want to, like you said earlier, don't want to give away too much, but I'm just wanting to know that you guys are safe, and we want to make sure our friends and family are safe as possible. And so I don't know if there's any questions out there in chat. I haven't been watching chat per se, but I'm glad that you guys are safe and that you're willing to give these updates that you've been able to do as well. I think I'm probably going to have Gabriel on again here shortly to get something from his side as well. So
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, my friend. Well, thank you so much for your time, and
Yeah.
praying for y'all safety for sure. And y'all should be well,
Appreciate that.
and keep me updated. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Be
Thank you.
well.
Thank you.
Take
Shalom.
care.
Thank you, guys. Shalom.